Hi, folks. A fundamental question that we need to address, whether you are looking at this wonderful book, Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, or any other work, the fundamental question that I want you to be cognizant of is, why does a writer write? And there are as many answers to that question as there are writers and writing events. So that someone would write for one reason one time and another reason another time, and one person would write for one reason, another person for another. There are myriad reasons for writing. But when you're reading something that someone else has written, that should be a question that you should be exploring. Why did she write this novel? Um, what is she trying to say to me? And in the process of thinking about that question, you need to really separate the writer from the characters in the story. There's a kind of adage that says that all characters in a book are basically part of the character of the writer. And I don't really know if that's true any more than we're all connected because we're all human and we all have a lot of similarities and similar possibilities and traits and hopes and fears, etc. But you really do have to separate it out, because if you don't, someone like Stephen King becomes a kind of scary dude, right? To be around. And he's quite the nicest person in real life. He's not his characters. Characters are part of the imagination. Um, Nonetheless, the writer, herself, himself, themselves, they, they have something to say to us. And when we pick up a book, we kind of make a contract with the writer. And the contract is, I will listen to what you have to say. And I will filter it through my own self, but I will listen to it through your eyes. You're going to be showing me, oh writer, you're going to be showing me your view of something about the world. I'm going to see the world just a little bit differently, or maybe a great deal differently, as a result of having read what you wrote. And because of that, I want to understand what it is you're saying to me. And so I'm going to read what you have to say carefully, honestly, and filter it, but keeping what you have to say. It's sometimes hard to do that, right? Um, it's sometimes hard to sort that out and really look at what it is that an author is saying to us, because we bring our own experiences into any kind of reading, and our own experiences seem to kind of like take over. Um, but we have to be honest about it as best we can and really see the world through someone else's eyes. I don't know about you, but I get tired of being me sometimes, like, delightful as I am. I get tired of being me. I think we all get tired of being ourselves. And that's possibly one reason why we want to be entertained. We want to be taken outside of ourselves for just a little bit. And an author entertains. That's a big thing. I mean, if a book is not interesting, you're not going to read it. So a big motivation for a writer is to make a book interesting. That's huge. They need to entertain you. Just like a film producer or director needs to entertain you. Um, a painting needs to be entertaining. It needs to engage you, but it needs to kind of hold you somehow. And if it doesn't have something that holds you, then you're not going to become engaged in it. So in being entertained by Janie in this particular book and by Zora Neale Hurston, who writes this book, then we get to be someone else for a short while. We get to see the world through Janie's eyes a little bit. I want to share with you a wonderful book, and there are actually a couple of these in different forms. I'll show you both of them, by another Southern writer. Now, Zora Neale Hurston is a Black Southern writer and writing from that viewpoint. And Janie, of course, is a Black woman writing or speaking in this book from that viewpoint. But Eudora Welty is a white woman, and she is a writer from the South, from Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi. She's very famous. She was a very famous writer. And she wrote a number of works. And she also, before she really became big as a writer, I guess as she was writing and doing that, she was hired by the government in the 1930s during the Depression as a photographer. And she went across the South taking photographs of people, just faces, individuals, maybe couples, maybe small groups, but mainly people, individual. And these photographs are put together in this particular book and in another book called One Time, One Place. And these are she captures in the photographs stories about people. Like when you see this woman, I'm not sure you can see it very clearly, but when you look at that face and you look at her body, the drape of her body, the drape of her arms, the slight smile, isn't it wonderful? The slight smile, the way her eyes are looking, the almost kind of classic column behind her, which is actually a wooden column on the side of a porch, but it looks very classical. And I don't know about you, but I come up with stories when I look at this, when I look at photographs. Right away, my mind is wondering, what is she smiling about? What is she thinking about? What's going on in her world? And Eudora Welty was asked very specifically about this. She was asked, some believe that it is an artist's works that best express his or her biography. How do you think these pictures you've taken pertain to yours? And this is her response. Not in any way, I hope, except indirectly. I wasn't trying to say anything about myself in the pictures of people. I was trying to say everything about them. And my taking them was the medium. The photographs are saying what I saw. I was just the instrument, whatever you want to call it. So also, writers, they're trying to say something about the characters. And they are just kind of like the instrument. This is how they can write things down. I write a lot of stories and I write a lot of memoir pieces about my own life. And I find people so interesting. Don't you? I mean, I think we all do. I think that everyone has wonderful stories to tell. Just if you scratch the surface of anyone, even just a little bit, you find wonderful stories there. And I love to write those down. Those are not stories mainly about me. They're stories that I find interesting about someone else. And I like to capture those. However, I make choices as to what I capture and as to what I print. And Eudora Welty made choices about what photographs she printed, what photographs she took. Zora Neale Hurston made choices about what angle the story takes. This is a story about a woman, and she goes through so many changes, but it doesn't catalog every single detail of her life. It catalogs, or it illustrates moments of her life that have like a pivotal point where something changes. Why does Zora Neale Hurston do that? And what does she want us to get about Janie's changes and Janie's choices? These are things I want you to think about. And ultimately, of course, as always, the most important thing I want you to think about eventually is, what are those pivotal moments in your life? If you were Zora Neale Hurston, and or if I were Zora Neale Hurston and I were writing about your life somehow, what would I say? What would be those pivotal moments where you could see changes happening to yourself, where somehow the world became different, where events around you, circumstances around you kind of forced you into a particular place or a particular time, but then you did something with that, like Janie did. What would those moments be? But that's for outside of class. That's for after you're finished with me, because for inside of class, I want you to be thinking about the novel itself and that contract that we have with Zora Neale Hurston, that we're going to be looking at her words and we're going to try to see, what is it she's trying to tell us? What is it she wants to say? In 1937, what is she saying to us? And what does she want us to get as the essence of Janie? That's your task. You're up for it. I can't wait to read some of the ideas you have.